Have you ever really stopped to wonder where bias comes from? It's a heavy topic, for sure. But getting a handle on it is pretty much the only way we can start to fix it. So today, we're going to break down how bias is built, piece by piece. And, this is the important part, how we can unlearn it, especially when it comes to kids. All right, let's jump right in. So, this is the big question, right? The one that frames this entire conversation. Is bias something we're just born with, like it's part of our internal hardware? Or is it more like software that we download from the world around us as we grow up? The answer to this really changes everything. To get to that answer, first we've got to understand that bias isn't just one thing. It's actually a progression. It all starts with a simple thought. That thought then starts to shape a feeling. And that feeling, well, that can drive us to act. And this right here shows that progression perfectly. See how it flows? It all kicks off with a stereotype. That's the thought. That thought can then lead to prejudice, which is a feeling. And finally, that feeling can bubble up and turn into discrimination, which is an action. It's a chain reaction. What we think shapes what we feel, and what we feel, well, it affects how we behave. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning with stereotypes. This is the cognitive part of the puzzle. You can think of them as these kind of distorted pictures we have in our heads that we pick up from, family, friends, media, everywhere. They're basically just oversimplified labels that we stick on entire groups of people. So what happens next? Well, when we hold on to one of those stereotypes, it can sort of curdle into prejudice. This is the emotional piece. It's that negative attitude, that gut feeling that pops up, and it comes directly from that overgeneralized thought we were just talking about. And that, of course, brings us to discrimination. This is where the rubber meets the road. It's the behavioral part. It's what happens when those prejudiced feelings get put into action. It's treating people poorly, maybe excluding them or avoiding them, all because of a stereotype you're holding on to. So you see, it's all connected. Thought to feeling to action. Now, this behavior, the discrimination, it doesn't just look one way. It actually has a whole lot of different faces in our society, and they usually end with an ism. And take a look at this. You can see the pattern, can't you? Racism, sexism, ageism, they all follow that same formula we just laid out. It starts with stereotypes and prejudice, which then leads to discriminatory actions against a particular group of people. It's the same structure, just a different target. Now, this is a really, really critical point. Some biases are conscious, we're aware we have them, but a lot of the time they're unconscious, implicit. We don't even know they're there. And that means even people with the absolute best intentions, people who would say they reject prejudice, can still have these hidden biases that influence their behavior without them ever realizing it. And all of that brings us to what I think is the most powerful and hopeful part of this whole thing. If bias is built on things we pick up from the world around us, then that means hate itself is a learned behavior. This quote, wow, it really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? Kids learn prejudice from what they see and hear, from their families, their teachers, from what's on TV. It's just like how love is learned when kids are nurtured. Hate is learned from the messages they absorb. But here's the amazing part. If hate is learned, it can be unlearned. So how do we actually do that? Well, the expert Louise Derman-Sparks gives us a fantastic roadmap. First, she says we need to ditch this idea that kids are colorblind. They're not. They absolutely notice differences. And, this is huge, talking about those differences doesn't create prejudice. You know what does? Silence. And while pointing out similarities is nice, it's not enough. We have to actively teach kids to value what makes us different. And most importantly, it is never too early to start having these conversations. Think about it. A child's environment is constantly sending these powerful, often unspoken messages about who matters in the world and who doesn't. And this is especially true in places like daycare or school. This slide just lays it out so starkly. On one hand, when kids see people who look like them and their families in books, on posters, in the toys they play with, it sends a really positive message. It tells them, you belong here, you are valued. But what happens when they don't see themselves represented? Well, the message is just as powerful, but in a negative way. It says, you're invisible, you don't matter as much. And bias isn't just about what's visible or what's missing. It's also in the air, through things called microaggressions. These are those little, everyday comments or questions that, whether they're intentional or not, send these harmful messages. And the thing is, one or two might not seem like a big deal, but they add up. The cumulative effect can be incredibly toxic for a kid's developing sense of who they are. Okay, so what is the solution here? How can we build environments that actually fight bias instead of feeding it? Well, it all comes down to this really important idea called cultural continuity. Let's break that down. Basically, kids just do so much better when there's a bridge connecting their home life and their school life. When the things that are important at home, like language, traditions, values, are also respected and reflected at school, kids feel secure, they feel competent, they feel like they belong. But when those two worlds are completely different, they have to work so much harder just to adjust, let alone learn. And really, that's the whole point. The end goal is to create these culturally responsive communities, places where that gap between home and school just disappears, and every single child, every single family feels seen, feels valued, and feels connected. That's how we do it. That's how we actively unlearn hate and build something much, much better. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. Take a look around at the world of the children in your own life. What messages are they getting from the books on their shelves, the shows they're watching, the people they see every day? What are they learning from what's there? And maybe even more importantly, what are they learning from what's missing?